2024 was a breakout year for China's military. As we've discussed on the show here, China has shown off some of its rapidly advancing military technology in the last couple of months. It's unveiled a series of cutting-edge military hardware, a sixth-generation fighter aircraft, a 40,000-ton amphibious assault ship nearly the size of India's aircraft carriers, massive air and sea drones of the size rarely seen elsewhere. The PLA is already the world's largest military, and the PLA Navy is the world's largest navy. Now, these are very impressive achievements, and China's neighbors should be concerned, as we all are. But behind the facade of military modernity lies a troubling fact. First-generation problems, if you can call them that. Corruption. Between July and December 2023, at least 15 high-ranking military officers and defense executives have been removed from their posts. Several leaders are being investigated or removed for corruption. They were in charge of modernizing China's ground-based nuclear and conventional missiles, believe it or not. In December, 9 officials were removed from the PLA military. And in the last 2 years, Xi Jinping has arrested or dismissed more top military generals and admirals than at any other time in China's recent history. In fact, the Pentagon's annual report to the US Congress on the military and security developments involving China was released just last month. And this report interestingly contains a 5-page segment on the impact of corruption on the PLA. And joining me to discuss these developments are Lieutenant General Rakesh Sharma, Lieutenant General Ravi Shankar, and Dr. Tilak Jha. Welcome to the News 9 Plus show.
Thank you.
General Sharma, I want to start by reading out this excerpt from the US report, which I just mentioned, the Pentagon's annual report to the Congress. The extent of the wave of the current corruption cases touching every service in the PLA may have shaken Beijing's confidence in high-ranking PLA officials, because rooting out corruption in the military has been a major focus for Xi since he became CMC chairman in 2012. Now, there's a saying that the fish rots from the head down. Is this the problem that's bothering China? While it's rolling out 5th and 6th generation fighter aircraft, it's got some very first generation problems of corruption right from the top to the bottom.
Thank you, Sandy, for inviting me. I read the report with interest. And of course, many things that come out of the West, one have to take with a pinch of salt. Last year's report, they had not included any chapter on corruption. This year, They have a 5-page chapter on corruption. Now, having said that, first is that as a head of state, President Xi taking so much of interest in the military is unseen anywhere else in the world. Can you see any government devoting so much on time on national security issues and issues which are pertaining to the armed forces as President Xi does right from the time he takes it? No government is actually...
Right. But General Sharma, there's a history to that. The PLA is actually the army of the party, and it's not the army of China. The army of China is actually in Taiwan. So the PLA
he has got economic... Yes. He got economic woes, he's got 1,000 other problems,
yes,
but he still devotes so much of time. We can't talk about the same thing in India. Yeah?
Yes.
Second, despite all these purges that he's been doing, 81 odd journals being sacked,
yes,
the journals don't understand that he's doing purge and he'll put us into jail, and they keep doing it. I mean, are we saying that the people are so dumb at the hierarchy in PLA,
yes,
that they continue doing the same thing despite knowing...
So you're saying that all this is a facade, and all of these are actually purges of the PLA by Xi. He's eliminating potential rivals, you think?
Yeah, so 2 issues here. One is discipline. One is that there ought to be corruption. There is some corruption, you take it away.
Right.
Second is the issue, what he says, 2 insufficients or 5 incapables. He says that,
yes,
there is an issue of professional competence. If there is inability to command, or there is, those people do not match the vision of President Xi, or they are not able to deliver.
Right.
So in India, if there is a department which is supposed to produce some goods across for the military, is
yes,
unable to deliver, do we sack anybody? No, we continue with the same thing. They get promotions and continue onwards.
Right.
Here he says, you don't deliver, you go home.
Okay.
So I think discipline is one thing. I think his achievements ought to be weighed in a similar coin, which you rightly pointed out some time ago.
Right. So you're saying that all of this is just a ruse for removing non-performers, and corruption seems to be one of the excuses. But General Ravi Shankar, you focused on this extensively. While you're looking at the fifth and sixth generation aircraft, you're also looking at the problems of corruption. And Xi Jinping, as General Sharma mentioned, seems to be running a one-person Dodge Department of Government Efficiency in China, and is routinely sacking people across the board. I mean, it's literally every arm of the PLA is being purged of senior generals. My question to you is this, very simple. Does corruption affect the fighting potential of an army? I mean, how does an army that routinely sees its leadership being removed, sacked, purged, disappeared, how does it fight?
Yeah, I completely agree with you. To a large extent, the morale and the leadership of the army will get affected. There is, there is corruption there already there. There are cases of, poor equipment or malfunctioning of equipment. You look at their rocket launchers, you look at their DF-17, which misfired, went elsewhere.
Yes.
And you look at the sub which sank, So when you look at it, the equipment is all dodgy. And then over and above that, you have the leadership being sacked. There's a political issue to it. So overall, I don't think the leadership is in a great state. But having said that, the PLA has had this history of being purged and still being able to fight. That's one point I want to highlight. But overall, I think largely the potential of the PLA would be degraded. Now, let me add, it's very nice to say you add a fifth generation aircraft or a sixth generation fighter, or, all those fancy things. They are all new equipment, untested, not experienced, and they take a lot of time to get in and get used to the whole thing. So their efficacy is also a little suspect. So I think you have to see this holistically. You also have to understand that the PLA is a conscript army, right? They're new soldiers on new equipment with new leaders. They see the whole story as a whole, rather than just that. And plus, the PLA, as you rightly said, is the largest army with the largest navy, all that, and it is seeking new roles. It is seeking new roles away. It's got into new battlefields over the past 4 years, which it never had earlier. Earlier it was just Taiwan. Then it's now gone into South China Sea. It's also looking somewhere beyond, the Taiwan and to Guam in the Western Pacific.
Do you think it's biting off more than it can chew, General Shankar? It's overstretched. It's looking at too many fronts at the same time.
Too many fronts. Yes. And that's what they feel. It's not what I feel. They feel that they face 4 fronts and that they are overstretched. And they also feel that this leadership, axing will affect their capability.
Yes.
And with all other things which I mentioned. So it's not like as much as I go along with General Rakesh Sharma, that PLA is used to these purges.
Right.
But I think in this case, there are one too many.
Right. One too many purges. It's unprecedented indeed. And Dr. Tilak Raj, you're a China expert. You've been looking at these developments very closely in Beijing. How does this strengthen Xi Jinping's hold over the military, do you think? Or does it actually weaken it? Because as General Ravi Shankar mentioned, that it seems to have hollowed out the PLA's senior leadership, the generals who will actually lead the kind of wars that Xi Jinping wants them to fight in the next couple of years. This repeated purges of senior leadership affecting morale, how does this play out for someone who's literally China's leader for life?
See, I think we have to keep in mind that the party holds the balance.
Yes.
I think that's the philosophy on which the Chinese Communist Party has been leading the army. And I think President Xi, he has a deep distrust and about the loyalty and honesty of his most senior officers.
Yes.
So I think the combat readiness in such a situation can go both ways.
Right.
If the people who are very loyal to Xi, they want to prove their loyalty, they could actually be more warmongering than others. We have seen the situation of Chinese diplomats playing a hawkish attitude in recent years. And then, of course, they keep changing his stance. So
Yeah.
to prove loyalty, they may go overboard, and at times it could be the other way around. But I think to call it a professional army and to expect professionalism from Chinese army is something that's deeply in doubt. And I think we have to put this put this debate into that context, that the professionalism of Chinese army is deeply
Yes.
suspect, doesn't behave like a professional army. From South China Sea, where it sends militias to sort of topple Philippines Navy, Philippines ships, and and all across, we have seen time and again Chinese army not doing things the way army does.
Right.
It's not necessarily behaving like Pakistan, but at the same time, it doesn't really behave like a professional army.
It doesn't behave
That's
like a
problem.
professional army. That's a
That's
good,
a problem.
important point, Dr. Tilak Raj. And, I'm going to ask General Rakesh Sharma this question. General Sharma, you've commanded the 14 Corps facing both our fronts, both our friendly neighbors to the west and to the north. And I think it's a very unique situation on both fronts. On the one side, on the one front, you have a military that is in complete command, which controls even the nuclear weapons. And the politicians are literally like a bonsai democracy that you have in Pakistan. And in the north, you have this very powerful chairman for life, literally, that's Xi Jinping, controlling a military. How different are these two systems really?
So one issue is that, at least I was taught when I was growing up in my years is never to underestimate an adversary.
Yes.
We must learn the adversary's qualities and his plus and minuses, but never underestimate it. You will be surprised in war and you will not know what to do. So when we start contemplating that we have two adversaries and there is an adversary on the northern front which has internal issues, we too have hundreds of internal issues ourselves. If there is a weakness that comes out in war, which is evident in matters of conscription, matters of poor equipment, matters of training, matter of command and control, that we must take it as a bonus when the war is on. At this juncture, start contemplating that they have got a weak army or weak armed forces or weak equipment. I think we will put ourselves into a harm's way in overall analysis, and we will not know what to do when the war comes up if we are surprised. So that's for the Chinese. For the Pakistanis, they are a force to reckon with because they are a national security state.
Yes.
The army runs the country. Army is the custodian of national security. Army is the whole soul. So for them, it is a question of survival.
Yes.
It's not PLA. For Pak army to fight and to come up on top is a question of survival of Pakistan army as an entity in Pakistan. It's the question of Pakistan's identity. The identity, the pehchan of Pakistan is related to Pakistan army.
Right.
Even when the people have got aversions towards Pakistan army in some way. So, there are two different facets altogether.
Right.
When we fight Pakistan army, we have to fight with them that they are fighting with their backs to the wall. And if they do not perform well, the country will rise against Pakistan army, which has been a custodian for 7 decades.
Yes, absolutely. Interesting, observations, General Sharma, on the differences and the similarities, in fact, on our northern and western fronts. The fact is that we have to worry about both of them because they share such a close relationship. And of course, that point that you made about never underestimating our adversaries is well made. And General Shankar, I'm going to ask you this point about what the CMC Vice Chairperson He Wei-dong told a PLA delegation last March. He said that the CMC would crack down on fake combat capabilities, he said. Was he referring to the fact that these weapons-related procurements were actually hollowing out the PLA? And I ask you in the context of our own tryst with political corruption. In the 1980s, you had the Bofors case that came up, of bribery in the purchases of the howitzers, which actually set our defense capability back by several decades. And you wrestled with those problems when you were DG Artillery.
Yeah, I think there is a point. Let me clarify this. Like General Sharma said, we shouldn't underestimate the enemy. There's no doubt about it in any battle. But at the same time, we shouldn't overestimate him also. And we need to also take into account his long-term capabilities, which he has demonstrated.
Right.
And things like this which are happening, is not a simple thing which happened. When not only He Dong, it is also Zhang Yubxia who's given instructions about how to go about procuring and all that. They have a problem in procurement. They have a
Right.
problem in corruption. So, like that's why I said their equipment is dodgy. Now you combine it with what has happened, like a missile going awry, and so many space launches which have gone awry.
Right.
So there is an issue which we need to understand. Another aspect which I'd like to bring: every second day, third day, you see a new organization coming up or breaking up.
Right.
For example, take the Strategic Support Force. It was,
Absolutely. Yes.
ushered in by Xi Jinping. And that became probably too strong for Xi Jinping to handle.
And in a
So
decade, he
broke it
had
down.
disbanded it and
He
created an
he
information
disbanded
force.
it and he's no, not three. He made three out of them:
Right.
Information Support Force, the Aerospace Support Force, and the Logistics Support Force. So I don't know how these armies function, but if this were to happen to our army,
Yes.
where 30 to 40 generals are being sacked,
Right.
you have a conscript system,
Yes.
you have new equipment untested coming and failing, and then of course your new organizations are coming in. How do you think this army can be absolutely fit and fine? And you have to assess it on a long-term basis. Of course, what you do on the battlefield is what you construe and do everything. That's fine. I think then there's this issue of lack of experience.
Right.
After 79, they have not fought a war, and all this equipment which has come in has not seen operational capability. And a lot of these capabilities which are coming in, if you read the PLA writings, they are pushing back. For example, Xi Jinping had a great thrust on AI and intelligentization. That's the word. Past informatization. So he was looking at intelligentization. On 31st December, PLA comes out with an article which says, look, it's all fine for AI, but AI doesn't meet human capabilities.
Right.
The final decision making has to be with the human in the loop. So there is some kind of a pushback also happening. So there are a lot of rumors of the PLA not being under control of Xi Jinping
Right.
at this point of time. So I don't think we should ignore all those, because when you assess armies, it's not only for every day. Only you start assessing them only for the battle. You start assessing them from long back so that you get an overall picture, a balanced picture.
Right.
And then you say, okay, this is what I'll do or not do. But that's a different issue altogether.
That is indeed. But, this relationship between the party and, of course, the chairman, that is Xi Jinping here, and the PLA is a very interesting one. And Xi Jinping is possibly the only chairman of China who's repeatedly appeared in military uniform. No leader since Mao Zedong has appeared in military uniform as often as Xi Jinping has. And Dr. Tilak Jha, this relationship between Xi Jinping and the military, does he really fear a powerful general coming up, a rival to his own tenure? Given the fact that the PLA today is far stronger than it has ever been in nearly a century of its existence, that it is actually today the largest navy, you're looking at the largest army, of course. And does he actually fear, while he is actually rearing this huge tiger to take on his neighbors and bully them and threaten them, he's equally afraid of this tiger swallowing him whole and soul. And that's the reason he needs to keep doing these purges.
Well, the purges are part of this thing, but at the same time, I think we don't have any evidence over the past 75 years to say that the Chinese military would go out of line of the party. But at the same time, there is always a threat, especially because she doesn't have the credibility of Mao Zedong.
Right.
She is not a revolutionary leader. She's command and control of the Chinese political party is bound several factors, but not the kind of revolutionary and popular sanction that Mao Zedong has. So, of course, there is a bigger possibility today than at any point of time of Chinese military doing things it has never done. And I think we also have to sort of see the positioning that how it has been done. China positions itself as a strategic competitor to the United States.
Right.
It keeps on searching new enemy. It keeps on giving new goals of positioning military modernization to the extent of creating world's most advanced army by 2015. Of course, its defense budget has grown at a much faster rate than its economy. So, and I think at the same time, we also see a lot of corruption, and in some of the most strategic sections of the army, for example, rocket force,
Yes.
we see evidence which will never possibly be out, but of highest level of corruption. So the more advanced military, the more investment, the more need for trust, and the more corruption. This is a vicious cycle. And
Right.
with all the high-profile ousters, we have every reason to believe that there is a lot of problems. You have two defense ministers, Li Shangfu
Yes.
and Wei Fenghe. What else is left? And I think they people were not even fired. One of them simply vanished for several months before another was appointed. This is definitely not a good sign. This is the third term of Xi Jinping, and there is much more pushback than at any time before, and we'll see more of it.
Right.
China has gone. It has become more inward-looking, more closed door than ever before. And with technology, that means to control is far bigger than any point. There's a lot of suppression happening. So I think all the doubts are there. But as of now, we have little window inside PLA.
Right.
But I think there is reason to believe that there are some serious problems, and
There's serious
we
problems
have to pay
indeed,
close attention.
Dr. Jha, as the saying that's mistakenly attributed to the Chinese, that may you live in interesting times. It seems that Xi Jinping is living in very interesting times, and China and the PLA under him are seeing very interesting times. This spate of sackings and purges of the military that's literally hollowed out his military, one of the largest in the world. You just heard it from our experts right here on the show. And this is something that Xi Jinping's neighbors would be very relieved about, gentlemen. The fact that you have a very powerful military that's looking inwards and trying to solve its own problems rather than looking outwards and threatening its neighbors and muscling them down on border issues and all of that. So this is a story that I think all of Xi Jinping's neighbors would be very interested in knowing about. But thank you very much for joining us today on this show when we're talking about Xi Jinping's mounting problems with corruption.